Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. Back to.
Can I? Well, I can still ask someone who's been to a show. Well, I have been, like a few situations. I think I've seen a hostess that was, not a hostess, a girl that had been to one of your shows, and a girl that had been to one of your shows. And usually, I just talk to anybody. I just don't care who you are. And so she's parked and I'm parked, and we're waiting for our daughters to come out of the car, and I'm saying, what the heck, I'm going out. Talk to her a second. Have you seen Mason before? she says, oh, I think so. I said, oh yeah, I'd like you to look at it. And you know what? Anyway. And then we start talking, and I find out that she's been to one of her shows. And I said, oh, I'm excited. So why did you book a show? And then she ends up telling me that she's Commander's wife, and I don't think it would be appropriate for her to do that or whatever. But the thing is, I didn't ask her before I found out that she was with her. But at the same time, I don't want to go to everybody and say, okay, well, I do this, and have you already come upon someone doing this?
Well, I mean, when you're lifestyling, or when you're kind of approaching people and you don't know if they've ever heard of Premier, just say, hey, have you ever heard of Premier? And they'll say yes or no. If they say yes, then say, oh, have you ever been to a show, or have you booked a show? And then right off the bat, you'll find out where they're at. They could have already had 6 shows with Alicia, and then they're obviously Alicia's, or they can say, oh yeah, I went to a show a while ago, whatever, and then, I mean, the bottom line, we can go on and on with all these different examples and stuff, but you just use your judgment, just really come from a place of the golden rule, okay. How would I want other jewelers to handle this situation, and when in doubt, it's okay to say, I just want to make sure that I'm doing things right, or that I'm, not stepping on anyone's toes, so, let me talk to Alicia first, and then I'll get back with you, or, whatever. So that would probably be the best way to handle it. And that's why, again, with prospecting, with hostesses and customers, that's a little different, but prospecting is where it can depend. There's a lot of factors, there's a lot of time. Like I said, you can be prospecting someone who doesn't even know it. We've been prospecting Alicia for years, and she didn't even know it. So yeah. So just really use your judgment on that. Some of the ways that you are going to be an example to your own downline and to the other jewelers is the way that you're conducting yourself, and we've been talking about this obviously. Upholding policies, just having that commitment. There's going to be times where you may not necessarily agree with the policy, you may not understand it, but that doesn't mean that you still don't uphold it. And it doesn't happen that often, but there's been occasions where the way that Premier ran a promotion or something, and that jewelers just sort of questioned or thought, well, maybe they could have done it this way or whatever. That's okay to question things. It's okay to write Premier a letter and give them suggestions. That is fine. But in front of everyone else, or in front of your downline, you uphold it. That's really important. That you're not ever looking like you're questioning Premier and their way of doing things to your downline and to other jewelers. You have to be willing to always set the standard with conduct, with upholding policies and stuff, even when it's awkward and even when it's difficult. It can be awkward to have to say to your jeweler, you really can't wear jeans to trainings. Sometimes that is awkward, But it's not about. But that's the line where it's not always about being a friend. You are also that that authority figure to the people that you sponsor. And so sometimes it's awkward, but Premier expects that we're going to do it anyway. That we're going to uphold that, and that you're not going to put it on your sponsor. You're not going to go to your sponsor and say, "Can you say something to her about her jeans?" No, you are the sponsor. It is your job to do that. Okay.
That's why I tell all my people that right away.
And usually they'll follow you, the way you dress when you go to her show should be the way she's dressed when she comes to.
And that's why setting that standard too, and really, like, you can't be a hypocrite about things too, you can't be waltzing in your sweatpants to training and then expect to, and then expect to tell your new jewelers not to do it too, and I don't think that's an issue with anyone here, but again, that's just an important thing to bring up. Just as we are premier to our guests and hostesses, you get out of time, you are premier, you are premier, you are premier to your jewelers. And so just really, really keep that in mind. And I know I'm really hammering a lot of these things before some of you have ever even sponsored, but it's important. It's important to me, it's important to Premier that you really understand what's going to be expected of you before you ever even go down this road and consider sponsoring. I'm not trying to scare you. I hope I'm not being scary. Am I scaring you?
With my daughters, I'm leaving next month, actually. I was kind of thinking about that. Lisa's gone. And I don't want them to, fail because...
No. You'll call.
She moved a month after. She calls me all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and I feel, we've major training that first month. And then after, just call us.
Really quickly, and then we'll move on to going through the OP. When you choose to sponsoring is a choice. Premier makes it a choice. That's why it's very separate from our retailing business. It's something that, we make a conscious decision that we choose to do. We're never forced to do it, pushed into do it or anything. So when you make this choice, when you choose to sponsor, you give up the choice of doing certain things. Number one is you give up the choice, like we just talked about, of whether or not you're going to follow all the rules and all the policies and stuff. It's no longer a choice if you're going to attend trainings. Things come up, life happens. Sometimes we can't make it to every rally. You really need to make it an effort and a priority to go to every rally. But sometimes it's not always possible. But the monthly trainings, there's really no excuse. Never schedule a show. Never, you can plan your family vacations. Of course, on occasion, sometimes something will come up. That's okay. The occasional training. But for the most part, make it that much of a priority that it's very important to you. If trainings aren't important enough to you to come to, then you're never going to be setting an example for your downline that they're going to be important for them to come to either. So trainings are really, really important. Trying to make it to every training and as many rallies as possible. I lost my notes on that. Where was it? Okay. One more thing too, we talked about the professional dress. Another thing is children at trainings. This is another thing that sometimes that can be really awkward because it comes up, and sometimes people will sort of argue with you on that or be upset about that and say, well, this is supposed to be a business where we stay home with our children. Why can't I bring my children? The way to handle that is to just say, Premier is, yes, this is a business with a lot of stay-at-home moms, we have children, but it still is a business. This still is a professional business. You wouldn't bring children into a professional business setting meeting, and that's the kind of weight that we need to carry with our trainings. Even though it's in my living room, it is still a professional business meeting for our business, and it's important that we not have children. We all have children. If we all brought our children, that would be a mess. So we can't, it has to be black and white. We can't make exceptions. It just is, it just is. Then they can go.
Are nursing babies?
We tried that. We did that when a couple people had babies. It was tough. It was really hard. It was tough, and it didn't work out so hot because, and it was a good learning lesson for me because I put it on the moms. I said like 4 months, and then there was I kind of made an exception because there was like a feeding issue or something, and I kind of put it on the mom and said, well, when it becomes a disruption, I'm going to trust that you will stop. But then the problem is sometimes some moms' definition of disruption isn't the same as everyone else's. And it was a good learning lesson for me that even though it's tough, sometimes it is better to just be black and white about things.
And it's your due time anyway,
Yeah, and because nursing is a sticky issue. It's some people people approach it differently. With nursing, some people it's easy for them to be away. Some people can't. Blah blah blah. I think from now on, I'm just going to have even in the case of nursing, just a no baby policy because it just was very disruptive. It was just disruptive.
And the nice thing about Premier though is that you can stop for a little bit and go back.
Yeah, and that's why. And like I said, sometimes that's really awkward to have to say to a jeweler, "I'm really sorry," but then you're not going to be able to come to trainings, and it's tough because as a sponsor, you want your daughters to come to trainings, you want to help them out, you want to work it out for them, but we also have to take everyone else into consideration, and sometimes. Sometimes it's just not going to work out.
It works.
Yeah.
It's okay, I still like it.
I know. Don't hate me. I was a nursing mom.
I know.
I know, but I worked it out. Jared came with me to trainings, and he sat all the way to Tucson. Liam was like 6 weeks old, and he sat outside with him. That's how I worked it out, And I'm not